ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la.
A few moments ago, one of you said to me that you were really glad that Judy decided to come back to Stamford to celebrate Sheldon's life. And I told you that there was no hesitation, that that was never in question for Judy. And the proof of why that is so is in the room. It would have been an incomplete closure to his life's journey if it couldn't happen here and if it hadn't happened with you. When you walk into a place that has been a home for so long, something special can happen, especially when you haven't necessarily found a full replacement in your new location. And this place never stopped being home for you and Sheldon. And rest assured, if you needed proof, you never stopped being family. This is a family reunion, and Sheldon's given us a gift, again, the gift of a reason to come together. This is both a Sinai dream team and a Team Sheldon in its fullness. It's a beautiful thing to look around and to realize just how many people loved him as much and certainly more in many cases than I did. Sheldon Katz strikes me as perfect as an example of the Israeli tzabar, the Israeli sabra. It took a little time once you meet Sheldon Katz. A little rough, a little tough, a little standoffish. But you didn't have to wait very long. You didn't have to work very hard to get past the gruffness, to realize that inside the prickly skin, you'll find the sweetest, most authentic soul. And I didn't get enough. Because of the logistics of the day, we've already spent a little time together in New Jersey, laying him to rest with the rest of family who's already predeceased him. And it was a beautiful gesture from many who are here now and others who joined us there and didn't continue to Stamford. But that was not a full funeral, and this is not a full burial to the end. We're combining everything, and through it all, you've just provided me more stories. Why is it that for some people, the stories are so much easier to remember? Is it because they're so much more extreme? Could be. Mike was telling me about the time he got kicked out of the Marriott. Those are the kinds of stories that you don't forget. And I just invite you to take a moment to reflect and isolate in your mind a story, particularly if you think it might be a story about Sheldon that someone else never experienced. Because after this ceremony, this celebration of his life, there'll be the opportunity for you to kibitz something he did better than most anyone I know. And in those interactions, if you've got a story, the only sin would be in keeping it to yourself. God, you've been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains came into being, before you brought forth the earth and the world, from eternity to eternity, you are God. And you return us to dust. You decree, return, you mortals. In your sight, 1,000 years are like yesterday when it's passed, like a watch in the night. The span of our small life is 70 years and 10, or, given strength, 80 years. But the best of those years have trouble and sorrow, and they pass by speedily, and we're left in darkness. Teach us, therefore, so to number our days that we may attain a heart of wisdom. Wisdom is something that comes in so many forms. There are a number of what's now known as the Eugene B. Borowitz Memorial Bible Study, but it used to just be called Bible Study. And it wouldn't be Bible study in its classic form without him. And he had opinions on each part of the conversation, but the wisdom was such a special part of his pursuit. A brief story. There was one moment, relatively early in my relationship with Sheldon, when he had come back into the Temple Sinai office to apologize to everybody. I don't remember the issue. Something had set him off, and he had responded badly. And he came in with the typical apologies, with his hat in hand. And I pulled him aside and I wondered, Sheldon, you've been doing this for how many years? You blow up, and you come back and apologize. You ever thought about trying a different approach? And he said, I'm too old. The pattern's set. I can't change at this point. And he was so wrong. In the following years, I didn't see that same Sheldon. I saw a Sheldon who attained more wisdom than he already had when I met him. I saw a man who softened into himself in the most beautiful way, and I couldn't get enough. The 23rd, right? Yes. The 23rd Psalm it's a gift from our tradition because it's been established as such a foundation for moments like this. It says to us that we can look around and we can see that God's with us so that we need not be afraid. There are so many ways that Sheldon continues to be with me. Every time I'm down in my wood shop making sawdust, Sheldon's with me. I think about him so often in Bible study. Sheldon's with me. Sheldon's with us. Yea, though we walk through the valley of shadow of death, we don't need to be afraid because God's with us. Sheldon's with us.
One tiny moment I remember, he used to always call me kid. He probably called y'all a kid, right? I like that. Adonai roi lo echsar binot sheyarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenaleni nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'magalei tzedek yancheni b'magalei tzedek leman shemo gam ki elech beged salmavet lo irara ki ata imadi shiftecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged zorerai dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya ach tov chesed yerdafuni kol yemei chayai kol yemei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar. Adonai roi lo echsar.
God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. God restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. And even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You've set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You've anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever and ever. As I prepare to read the 121st Psalm, I'm reflecting on the presence in my life that Sheldon played, the role that he played at Sinai, the the impact that he left on this community. And amongst so many of those, one stands out as, in my own life, one of my resident conservatives. And he prided himself on his conservatism. And I recall the day that we were out in the Sinai backyard with our project that we called Unity, with all of the white poles around the room, around the space, each one a different designator. There was a pole for I am a liberal, another one for I'm a dog lover, another one for I was born outside the US, I speak another language, I identify as LGBTQ. There were 36 of those poles, including one that said I'm a conservative. And the idea was that you were supposed to go to all the polls that spoke to one of your identities. And there were a lot of people participating. And I found Sheldon just going back and forth to the conservative pole. I am a conservative, I'm a conservative, I'm a conservative. And I said, Sheldon, what are you doing? He said, we're not highly enough represented here at Sinai. I need to speak for the others. Sometimes, when we endeavor to understand the other, we can hear a voice in our head. And so as I offer the words, I lift my eyes to the mountains, trying to understand, where does my help come from? Sheldon can be that voice of conservatism, of principled, ethical conservatism. I didn't agree with him, but I so valued that in my life. I lift my eyes to the mountain of a memory of this man. From where will my help come? From that little voice in my ear, his voice that I can still hear clearly. Esainai el hecharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Esainai el hecharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. I lift my eyes to the mountain. What's the source of my help? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day and the moon by night. God will guard all harm from you. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. We spoke a little bit earlier about the need to create frames through which we choose to see our loved ones. And eulogies are one of the most wonderful ways to do that, particularly when it's been a difficult road at the end of the journey. Ecclesiastes tells us there's a time for everything, for all those experiences under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to laugh and a time to cry. And he tells us there are times to keep silent, and that's not one of these. This is one of those times where we speak, where we tell, where we celebrate, and where we share. So I'd like to invite his daughter, Debbie, to share with us reflections of her father this afternoon.
Thank you. So I'm told that I'm sort of like my father, and I'm curious if this is true. So I ask, do I have a sense of direction and a love of travel that will take me to every state in the Union and almost every corner of the globe? Do I have the woodworking skills to build my kids custom bedrooms and my daughter, pardon the expression, one big-ass dollhouse? Will I be so loving and protective of my child that I refuse to let her move into a basement, probably rat-infested apartment in West Philadelphia, and then almost lose a finger dragging her futon up to, and I'm sure there was a curse word in here somewhere, flights of stairs to a better unit? Will I have the stamina to drive hundreds of miles up and down I-95 to help my child when she has chicken pox or when she miscarries, and then to leave the house at 4:30 in the morning to see a brand new grandchild? Will I proudly contribute to my children's and my grandchildren's educations, reveling in all of their academic successes? Will I have the lung capacity to be loud sometimes, really loud? Will I have the strength in my last painful hours to express my love for my spouse of almost 65 years? I don't know, and I really don't think I can live up to everything my dad was. He was a force who put everything into what he did, whether it was birdhouses or the synagogue budget. He loved his family and would do anything for us. I love you, Dad, and I'll miss you so much, but I'm glad that you are at peace.
Thank you, Debbie. I'd like to invite Ken to share his reflections of his father as well at this point.
One of the mitzvot in our Torah is to honor your father and mother. And an exemplar of that has been my sister Deb, who has really stepped up in everything required over a very difficult period. I knew my dad for 2/3 of his life, and we had a loving and close relationship. And yet there's the intriguing thing that I don't recall ever discussing deep things with Dad. What did he want out of life? Was he happy with how his life worked out? Was he ever disappointed in himself? I don't know. I'll never know. In the end, I don't think it mattered. Not that I can never know this for certain, but I suspect that Dad's philosophy was that it doesn't really matter what you think. It matters what you do. It matters how you act towards other people. And here's a somewhat incomplete list of what Dad was and did. Most of all, he was a loving husband of my mom. He was a wonderful father and grandfather. He was a loyal son of Abraham and Minnie and a brother of Matthew. He was an American patriot and a proud veteran. He was a capable corporate executive and a well-regarded boss. He was thoughtful and well-read. He was a generous philanthropist, and he was a supporter of his synagogue and the Jewish people. Dad, I'll miss you.
I joked earlier today that with their profound commitment to and engagement in the Jewish community, wherever they went, Judy and Sheldon collected rabbis like a set. They've got a pretty complete set here today. I misspoke earlier. I thought there were 5 of us. There are only 4 of us here. But one of them has been in Sheldon's life and Judy's life for a very long time, and I'd like to invite Rabbi Amy Walk to share some reflections as well.
Sheldon died this week during Parshat Noach. There's something rather fitting about this man, who was a regular attendee of Torah study in this very building, dying during a week of one of his favorite Torah portions. Noah was a builder. Sheldon was a builder. Noah worked with his hands. Sheldon worked with his hands. Noah worked to protect those around him. Sheldon devoted his life to protecting those around him. We read in the Torah that Noah was righteous, a righteous man in his generation. The verse causes endless commentary about what that means. He was righteous, but he lived in a wicked generation. So was he genuinely righteous, or was he righteous, but not so righteous, but better than the other folks around at the time? Well, which was it? If only Sheldon were here to engage in the discussion, I know he would have loved it. Sheldon was a man of unusual integrity and great intelligence. He strived to do the right thing and make a difference in this world. He had strong opinions and could sometimes be rather colorful in expressing his thoughts. Sheldon did not suffer fools. He also knew he was remarkably fortunate, and not everyone had such good fortune. He enjoyed striking up a conversation with people from all walks of life. and Sheldon would extend himself to others, whether he was going out of his way in what he did or writing a check. Sheldon embodied one of those foundational texts of the Torah, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, and namely Hillel's famous spin on the verse, what is hateful to you, do not do to others. If your loving your neighbor was at the heart of Sheldon's Torah, and namely not doing to others what would be hateful to him, he lived out Hillel's words quite well and tried in his own way to make sure a generation of the flood would not recur. I've organized my remarks about Sheldon around three major loves of his life: his country, Judaism and the Jewish people, and of course his family. Sheldon loved the United States of America. He was grateful that his parents, Abe and Minnie, were fortunate enough to have immigrated to the United States. And he was very aware that America was a land of opportunity for his family. Sheldon was very proud that he served in the United States Air Force between 1956 and 1958. It was Sheldon's keen mind and deep love of this country that inspired so much of his reading. Sheldon knew his American history. He loved to read a good biography or a good history book. I don't think in the years I knew Sheldon that he ever slept through the night. So often when we would go to visit Judy and Sheldon in Stamford, Sheldon would wake up for a few hours and he would sit and read in the den or at the kitchen table. The next morning, we'd talk about what it is he had read. Sheldon also read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times every day. The habit dates him a bit, but that's another story. For as long as I knew Sheldon, he understood that knowing current events was a way of remaining informed and an educated citizen. And as an intellectual, he would always expose himself to multiple perspectives and ideas. As a voracious reader, Sheldon loved to explore America. And as a voracious learner, he traveled. And upon retirement, Judy, you and Sheldon would drive anywhere. Now, Sheldon used to say he liked to drive because he just couldn't stand the airports. But long before 2001 and TSA, Sheldon and Judy would drive all over the United States and Canada. Together, you loved to explore those places which were not so famous, places where regular Americans lived and worked. Judy, you and Sheldon liked small towns as much as large cities. You understood the United States as a remarkable country, and you set out to explore the 50 states, eating in fine restaurants or modest diners, visiting museums and galleries, staying in fancy hotels or local motels. And wherever you went, you enjoyed talking to people and hearing their stories. Sometimes Sheldon could be very intimidating, but so many times he was gentle, curious, sweet, really wanting to hear where the waiter was from or how the guide in the museum came to be living wherever they were living. About the time I married into the Katz family, Sheldon retired. Upon retiring from his distinguished career at Seagram's, Sheldon had a lot of time on his hands, and lucky for this congregation, Temple Sinai, that he did. Sheldon devoted himself to the Temple community. He was a very proud Reform Jew, and he and I often debated the similarities and differences, the pros and the cons between conservative and Reform Judaism. He loved to talk about Judaism with me. We had many wonderful conversations about interesting books or ideas. Sometimes, but not always, Sheldon was willing to rethink his positions on Judaism. In the late 1990s at our family Seder, we introduced the tradition of concluding our Passover Seder by standing and singing Hatikvah. For the first several years, Sheldon remained seated. Something about the ritual rubbed him the wrong way. As a proud, patriotic American, it just didn't seem right. And then one year, as we came to Hatikvah, Sheldon stood up. The next morning over breakfast, Sheldon explained how his thinking had evolved and why he appreciated the strong Zionist message we were folding into our Seder. As an intellectual, Sheldon chewed on ideas. He never defaulted into simply doing what everyone else was doing. Sheldon understood the community was important. He devoted himself to his temple community. He always was willing to do what needed to be done. Whether it was staying after Torah study to ensure a minyan, or serving at the shelter on Sunday evenings, or whether it was helping to build the sukkah, or serve as treasurer, or move chairs, or straighten up, or write a generous check, Sheldon Katz felt responsible for this congregation. He lived his life with a sense of duty. And I should add that when Sheldon came to our home in Longmeadow, he did the same. He loved to come to minyan with me. I think because he liked to find a little time to talk with me when the kids weren't around, but I also think because Sheldon liked to help make a minyan, and he liked to be counted, and he liked to make a difference. Whenever Sheldon and Judy traveled, whether it was in the United States or abroad, he and Judy would explore the Jewish community. They would come home with stories, souvenirs, or memorabilia from wherever they were. The Jewish story was Sheldon and your Judy's story. That's why Sheldon loved to travel on the Melton seminars. Judy and Sheldon were interested in everything Jewish. I said that Sheldon loved his country, and I said that he loved his people. But I want to take a few moments to talk about how Sheldon loved his family. He was an incredible and dutiful son and son-in-law. He just did the right thing. He put his parents and his in-laws first when necessary. As your parents aged, Judy, you and Sheldon always visited them, tending to their needs, ensuring that your four parents received proper support and medical attention. But more than that, you both ensured that your parents had much to celebrate. I don't remember the occasion. Maybe it was a special birthday or an anniversary. But Judy, you and Sheldon brought Abe and Minnie, and Debbie came with to Overland Park, where we were living at the time. Traveling with parents in their late 80s and early 90s was not easy. But you and Sheldon knew that your parents, that Minnie and Abe would appreciate being in our home and spending time with their great-grandchildren. And that's where we'll leave that story. Judy, you and Sheldon also cared about your siblings, doing your part to ensure a strong connection with Joan and Stu, Mark and Terry, Matthew and Elaine. Sheldon understood that when he married Judy, he married her whole family. And I know, Judy, you felt the same way. You devoted yourself to the Stern and Katz families, making sure to go to family simchas and gatherings, always putting family first. I have to say, I've always marveled at how successful you were in instilling your values into your children, Ken and Debbie. I always appreciate the way Ken and Debbie come together and do the right thing. Both Ken and Debbie have a strong work ethic, an incredible sense of duty and integrity, and they both are real intellectuals. I remember sitting with Sheldon one afternoon. We were on the porch in the Falls Church apartment. I said something about how hard it is to raise children, and Sheldon smiled at me and said, "Tell me about it. It's a hell of a lot of work, but it pays off. Look at Kenny and Debbie." And I paused for a moment to simply say that you, Debbie and Rod, have carried an enormous and an incredible sense of duty in the way you have cared for your folks these last few years. Always, but especially in the move to Falls Church. I know you would move heaven and earth to ensure that your folks had everything that they needed. You set the bar very high for what does it mean to be loving and attentive to aging parents. Of course, we all know that Sheldon adored Judy. All he ever really wanted to do was make your life easier, whether it was running errands, folding laundry, doing the dishes, you name it. For Judy, Sheldon would do anything. I remember his 80th birthday party when he bought you a beautiful watch because he was grateful for the time he got to spend with you. That was a typical Sheldon moment. Okay, I can also hear Sheldon raising his voice with Judy. "Dear, dear, dear." And then there would be a little diatribe because Sheldon had a short fuse. I am very proud to say that he never, ever lost his temper with me. Not once did Sheldon Katz yell at me or Nina. For some reason, we belong to a small select club, but the yelling or lack thereof was less a reflection of the one being yelled at than Sheldon's way, and the love was never ever subject to question. The thing is, Sheldon lost it quickly, but he also regrouped and moved forward, not remembering what made him so mad in the first place. His strong sense of right and wrong or his frustration might cause an outburst, but he always emerged quickly, and the one thing is for certain, Sheldon knew how to laugh at himself, and we enjoyed that. Sheldon was the absolute best grandfather. Tamar, Gabriel, Nina, and Casey were incredibly lucky to have Sheldon Katz as their grandpa. Of course, I did not spend a lot of time with Casey and Sheldon, but here is what I know. Their minds worked in a similar way, and Sheldon appreciated that. I said that Sheldon liked to work with his hands and build things, and Sheldon used to say that he and Casey shared this ability to make things and think about how things worked. Judy shared with me that Sheldon so appreciated Casey's mind and was so proud to watch her explore and grow. Not so long ago, Casey was the one who came to her grandpa's rescue. He had a Lego set with too many pieces, and it was too much. And Casey to the rescue as she put the airplane together. And I dare say, not one other of those grandchildren could have done that. That was a Casey salvation moment. I can imagine how frustrated Sheldon was that he couldn't do the kit alone, but I can also imagine how incredibly proud and grateful he was that Casey knew what to do. The move from Stanford was not so much a move from Stanford, it was a move to be near Debbie, Rod, and Casey. Sheldon loved to give his grandchildren meaningful experiences, whether it was helping Tamar move to St. Louis, or renting a motor home to drive cross country to make the move from Kansas City to Massachusetts a fun adventure for Nina and Gabriel. Sheldon and you, Judy, were unbelievable. Honestly, I've said many times that I think Judy and Sheldon used to wake up every morning and say to themselves, what can we do to make Amy's life easier today? For 3 summers in a row, I came with all 3 children for a month. At the time, our children were between 1 and 8. I was participating in a fellowship at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, and I would leave early in the morning and come home after dinner. During those 3 summers, Sheldon used to say his favorite day was the day we came, and his second favorite day was the day we left. The quiet in the house on the day we left was magical. Now that I'm a little older, I have no idea how Judy and Sheldon had the energy to do all that they did for their grandchildren, but I'm so grateful that they did. When Gabriel's class was making Chanukias for our middle school art project, it was Sheldon who appeared prepared with all the art project materials. When Nina's class needed drivers for some field trip or another, it was Judy and Sheldon who drove from Stamford, Connecticut to Massachusetts so that they could escort a 3rd grade trip to wherever it is they were going, and always with a smile. Judy, you and Sheldon didn't really trust Ken and me to give our children a Jewish education. You took responsibility for showing the kids what it means to live Jewishly. When Tamar and Nina became bat mitzvah, you, Judy, read Torah. And when Gabriel became bar mitzvah, Sheldon read Torah. And for many Yom Kippur afternoons since, Sheldon read Torah here in this synagogue. You wanted your grandchildren to appreciate just how lucky they are to have been born Jewish. And when Nina decided to make Aliyah, Sheldon and Judy were supportive and proud. Sheldon cries because he loved his Nina and he wanted her nearby, and he was a crier. But Judy said it. It's about time someone in our family is living in Israel. The tears and the wisdom were actually just what Nina needed as she embarked on that journey. In both Overland Park and Longmeadow, our community and friends knew Judy and Sheldon. People used to stop me to say how lucky I was to have in-laws who were so supportive and loving. They would say, "Can I be their daughter-in-law too? Do you think they'd mind adopting my child as another grandchild?" Sheldon was thrilled to welcome me to welcome Mike into our family. And I remember the day Sheldon said to me, "Kind of crazy that Tamar met a nice Jewish boy in Holyoke. Who would have thought?" I've asked myself the same question. My dad died in 1993, and Ken and I had been married 13 months. My relationship with Judy and Sheldon was young, but they flew to Chicago to be with me and my family. Over the years, there were many times that I've missed my father, and in some ways, I've never stopped mourning his death. Somehow, Sheldon knew just the right balance to strike. He knew he would never replace my father. He didn't want to, but he would be a father figure to me, these many years. I could go on, but you have the picture and certainly have your own as well. Sheldon was a deeply proud American and Jew. He was a respectful and attentive son, a loving and loyal husband, a giving father, a wise father-in-law, and an incredible grandfather. He was a loyal soldier in ways far beyond his time in the Air Force. He was a dedicated man, a family man, a sweet soul, with a keen eye, a sharp tongue at times, but a knowledgeable and knowing spirit, wise and compassionate, tough and gentle. Sheldon has been an important person in my life since I was 29 years old. He influenced me, inspired me, and taught me. I will always love him for the way he treated me, and I will always be grateful to Sheldon for being an incredible grandfather. He served as a real role model, and that is a blessing which is eternal. Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may the memory of this righteous man be for a blessing.
Thank you, Rabbi. And finally, I'd like to invite his partner for all those decades, Judy, to come share her reflections.
Well, I would have been wise to check with my son first because he stole all the best lines. But I'll kind of talk a little bit about Sheldon's accomplishments in 90 years. The first one that we all mention is the dutiful and loving son. And he was also a most devoted big brother to his brother Matthew. He was a Boy Scout. Nobody mentioned that too. And now his granddaughter is an Eagle Scout, and that hopefully some of that tradition remained. He was a very loyal and proud captain in the U.S. Air Force, and he was a very protective and engaged father, as they have said, to Ken and Debbie, and a loving son-in-law, and a fun and generous uncle to Emily and Bob, Bradley and Kim, David and Adam, and Ben Katz. Very hard-working member, not only of the Temple Sinai community, but also during his years at Seagram, where he labored with his boss and his best buddy, Marty Bart, and as he always said, the best secretary in the world, Kathy Marr. And he was, not last but not least, the most loving and loyal and encouraging husband, the best that anybody could ask. It's going to be very difficult after 65 years of being Judy and Sheldon to suddenly just be Judy. But dear, rest in peace. I love you.
As a person thinks about their legacy and what lives on after their life comes to an end, it begins to matter both in the material, but much more importantly in the human impacts that you've made. But as I look around this place, as has been said several times, Sheldon is everywhere. Not just Kibud Av Va'em, honoring your father and mother, but Kavod Harav, honoring the rabbinate, was something that was instilled deeply in him. His honor for Rabbi Borowitz was impossible to overstate. And when he wanted to show that honor materially, the Bible study group came together and had the words over my shoulders installed. Know before whom you stand. Another small example is the easel that his picture is sitting on is one of the ones I believe he built. And the footstool next to me, exactly right. Debbie, I hope it is okay that when we were over hanging out at your house one time, your parents invited my daughter to pillage your big-ass dollhouse, and some of that furniture is still in the dollhouse that she plays with. Sheldon's wood shop, much of it, found its way into my wood shop. My kids don't know who this fella that I talk about all the time is, Sheldon, but when I spoke to him, he'd always ask, "What are you making in your wood shop these days?" And I was always careful to make sure he knew that it was my kids who were using his tools. As recently as this week, Amitai made his Halloween costume on Sheldon's bandsaw and table saw. Sheldon's memory is a blessing. You're right, Rabbi. It doesn't take any effort to say, Yehi zichrono livracha. May his memory remain a blessing for those of us who were lucky enough to have him in our lives. We're going to offer the words of El Malei Rachamim, a request of, I forgot, before that, we're going to do There Are Stars, Yesh Kochavim. Judy and I were talking about this. It speaks about the people that we might not appreciate when we have them, and only later do we come to see that. I don't know if that applies in his case or not, but I continue to find new ways to appreciate him.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו ונם. יש אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר, כאשר הם עצמם אינם עוד בתוכנו. אורות אלה המבהיקים בחשכת הליל, הם שמרים את הדם, את הדרך, את הדרך. הם שמרים לאדם את הדרך, את הדרך.
The care that he offered his country, his community, and his family has come to a close. But now we turn our attention to the care that his soul needs moving from here onward. El Malei Rachamim is the request of God to take over the loving embrace and care of his soul as he moves on to the world to come. If you're able, would you please rise?
El Malei Rachamim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. עם קדושים וטהרים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמת שמואל בן אברהם מרים ומרים יקירנו שהלכה לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Shmuel ben Avraham v'Miriam, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bonds of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say,
Amen.
Amen. We will honor his memory with words of Kaddish. And then, as I encouraged before, I hope you've found in yourself stories, because Judy and Ken and Deborah would like to invite you to stay afterwards if you're able, to share the stories, to laugh a little bit, maybe cry a little bit, and to continue the energy of a healthy Kehila Kedosha, a healthy sacred community here at Sinai that he puts so much of himself into. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divara chirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam ul'amei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal, shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May God comfort all of us, because we're all mourners. May God give us a sense of ease as a community bereaved. And let us say, Amen. As I shared at the cemetery, as much as Sheldon's absence pains you, we are, most of us, the ones here to comfort the mourners, those most close to him in his life, and he and theirs. And so for all of you who've come to both honor his life but to comfort his loved ones, I'd invite you to repeat these traditional words of comfort after me to them. To you we say, Hamakom,
Hamakom,
Yinachem,
Yinachem,
Etchem,
Etchem,
Bitoch,
Betoch,
Sha'ar,
Sha'ar,
Avle,
Avle,
Tzion,
Zion,
V'Yerushalayim.
Yerushalayim.
In English we continue, may God comfort you
May God comfort you
with all who mourn
with all who mourn
in Zion and Jerusalem.
in Zion and Jerusalem.
We'll leave this space to the sound of a quiet nigun, and we'll convene on the other side of the room for a time of celebration for a life that was well lived. Thank you, everybody.
Oseh shalom bimromav, יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל יושבי תבל.